All right, welcome to our yoga flow. Today we are going to raise our vibration. And so, getting yourself sitting comfortably, taking a moment to just check in with how you're feeling today, maybe closing your eyes, taking a breath in through your nose, and maybe letting out a sigh. Arriving. Noticing any tender spots, any tension anywhere, being gentle with those areas. We'll start by dropping our chin to our chest, letting the back of the neck stretch out. And then slowly taking your nose into a nice big circle. Being gentle with your neck, and then we'll take it in the other direction. Coming back to center, let's take the shoulders to our ears, letting them roll down our back. We'll take our fingertips to the floor, connecting with the earth. And then we'll inhale, reach the arms up. And exhale, letting them float back down, nice and slow. And inhale, reaching up. And exhale, back down. And once more, let's reach back up, keeping your arms up here. We'll let the right arm float back down, reaching up with the left. And then slowly bringing yourself over to the right. Breathing into that space. And then slowly coming back up, we'll bring the right arm back up. We'll let the left arm float back down, reaching up and coming over to your left. And then bringing your left hand up, we'll bring the palms together and down to our heart. Beautiful. Let's bring our hands onto our knees. We're going to do our Kapalabhati breath. So shining skull, getting rid of any fog from your sleep. And with our Kapalabhati breath, it's kind of similar to a dog panting. So if you've never done it before, you might want to start by just having your tongue out and breathing from your belly. So pulling your belly button in as you exhale. And if you have done Kapalabhati breath before, you can do it with your mouth closed and just breathing through your nose. So you're not going to be bringing your shoulders up and down. You're going to keep those nice and relaxed, and it's all coming from your belly. So let's begin. We'll start with our Kapalabhati breath. Short inhale and forceful exhale. And then bringing your breath back to its natural rhythm. Closing your eyes, maybe feeling a flood of energy. Maybe feeling your mind a little clearer. And we'll do one more round of the Kapalabhati breath. So when you would like to begin, you may. And then bringing your breath back to a natural rhythm. Feeling that flood of energy. Beautiful. We're going to come onto our hands and knees. And if your knees are tender this morning, you can always place a blanket underneath them. We're going to have our hands a little further away from our knees. We're going to come into some knee circles this morning. So bringing yourself forward and then taking your hips back. So being gentle, checking in with how your hips feel, how your knees feel. You might have a little pop or crack out of your knees. That's okay. Let's take them in the other direction. And then coming back to center, let's stretch back into child's pose, maybe taking your knees a little further apart, resting your head down onto the mat, breathing all the way up the back body. And letting go. Creating some space in order to raise your vibration. And then we'll come back onto our hands and knees, getting your knees back underneath your hips, your wrists underneath the shoulders. Fingers are nice and wide. We're going to curl our toes under and coming into a downward facing dog. So since this is the first one of the morning, let's generously bend one knee and then slowly and generously bend the other. Taking your time as you stretch out the back of your legs, walking one heel down at a time. And then maybe bringing both heels towards the floor, getting your head in between your arms, hips rising up towards the ceiling. Pulling your belly button in. And then we'll slowly take our hands back to meet our feet. You can bend your knees, hanging out over your hips, coming into our ragdoll. Maybe taking hold of your elbows and slowly swaying from side to side. And then coming back to center, back to stillness. You can uncross your hands, bend your knees a little more, and slowly roll yourself up, one vertebrae at a time, keeping your chin tucked until you're feeling stable, and then lifting your head, letting your shoulders roll back and down. So coming into our mountain pose here. Standing nice and tall, stacking everything up. Feeling your feet on the earth. And then from here, let's take our feet nice and wide, and we'll let the arms go from side to side, getting loose and limp, reminding ourselves that we need to be relaxed in order to rise up. And then coming back to center, coming back to stillness, maybe bringing your feet in a little closer. Let's see if we can shake a little bit. So shaking, getting rid of any heaviness that you might have brought to your mat. Shaking. And then we will settle. Taking a moment, close your eyes if you are feeling stable. Noticing that flood of energy flowing through you and around you. Beautiful. We're going to tap into some energy centers of our meridians, the end points. So we're going to start with the stomach meridian. So just underneath your eyes on your cheekbone, let's tap in here, helping to give those stomachs a little bit of a energy boost so things can work better for you. And then we'll take our fingers and tapping just underneath the collarbone. There's a little divot there. So tapping in there, helping to give you a little bit more energy for your day. And then we'll take those tapping fingers underneath the armpits, tapping into our spleen meridian, noticing if there's any tender spots. And then making a loose fist, let's wake up the thymus with a few thumps, keeping our immune system healthy, happy. And then shaking those hands out, we'll come back into our mountain pose, reach the arms all the way back up to the ceiling. And let's slowly hinge over the hips, coming forward into our fold here, taking a moment to notice how you're feeling, letting the back of the legs stretch out. And then we'll walk our hands back to the front of the mat, coming back into our downward facing dog. Breathing here. And then we'll bring the knees back down to the mat. We're going to come into our gate pose. So we'll take the left leg out, having our hands in front. Just noticing how that feels for your inner thigh. Making sure it feels right for you. And then if you would like, you can sink your hips back to that right heel, maybe coming into an extended child's pose here. Breathing into any tension and letting it go. And then we'll come back onto that right knee. Let's bring our hands to our waist, sitting up. Nice and tall. We'll reach the arms all the way up to the ceiling. And bringing your hands back to your heart. Beautiful. Let's do one more like that, reaching up. This time, we'll take the left hand and let it float back down to that left thigh. So we'll reach the right arm up and coming over to your left, making sure that it feels right for you. Breathing into that space. And then slowly coming back up, let's bring the left arm up with us. We'll bring the hands back down to our heart and then all the way down to the mat. We'll bring the left leg in. Let's switch sides. So taking the right leg out, checking in to see how that feels for you. Getting a nice stretch in the inner groin, inner thigh. And if it's accessible, you can bring your hip down to your left foot, coming into an extended child's pose. Taking a couple breaths here. And then we'll come back up. Let's bring our hands onto our waist, coming up. We'll inhale, reach the arms to the ceiling, bringing the palms together and back to your heart. And once more, reaching up. Let's take that right hand down to our right thigh, reaching up and over. Breathing into that space. Beautiful. Coming back up with your right hand palms together and back to our heart center. Let's bring the hands back to the floor. We'll bring that right leg in and sinking back into our child's pose. Taking a rest. And then we'll come back up onto our hands and knees. Let's take the right leg forward, coming into our low lunge, sinking the hips down, taking a moment to see how that feels. Maybe getting your left knee back a little bit so you can get a nice stretch into that deep psoas muscle on the left side. Breathing here. Maybe bringing your hands to that right knee. And if you're feeling strong today, you can reach the arms up to the ceiling, maybe looking up. And then bring your palms together. We'll bring them down to our heart center. We're going to twist it out here. So taking the left elbow to your right knee, right elbow up to the ceiling and pushing on the palms of your hands. Breathing down into your belly, twisting out any heaviness. Letting go. Beautiful. Let's bring our hands back to our heart and back down to the floor. We're going to curl the back toe under, bring that knee up, coming into a little high lunge here. So finding your balance, making sure that your hands are on either side of your right foot. Getting a nice stretch. And if it works for you today, you can bring your hands onto that right knee. So really, really gripping the mat. Feeling some stability in your legs and maybe even bringing your arms up. Looking up. And we'll bring the palms together and to our heart. And then twisting it out on this side. So left elbow to the knee, right elbow up. Using some concentration and focus here. And then bringing your hands back to your heart and back down to the mat. Let's take the right leg back into our downward facing dog. Taking a breath or two here. And then we'll bring the knees back down. Let's come back into child's pose. Taking a rest before we go to the other side. And then coming back into table, we'll take the left foot forward. Coming into our low lunge, sinking into those hips. Taking a few breaths as your hips settle. And then bringing your hands to the left knee, maybe sinking in a bit deeper. If you want, you can bring your hands all the way up to the ceiling. Maybe looking up, connecting with the universal energy. And then bringing your palms together back to your heart. And we'll twist it out this side. So right elbow across, left elbow towards the ceiling. Pushing on your palms. Breathing down into your belly. And then we'll bring the hands back to the heart and down to your mat. So curling your back toe, let's lift that knee up. feeling that nice stretch in our high lunge. And you can stay like this if this is enough for you, or you can bring your hands to the left leg, so really squeezing your toes into the mat, and then reaching the arms up, looking up, palms together, back to your heart, and twisting it out. Right elbow comes across, left elbow up. Breathing here. And then bring the hands back to your heart and down to the mat. We'll come back into our downward facing dog. And then bringing your knees down to the floor and resting back into child's pose. And then coming back up, let's swing our legs around. And we're going to come all the way down onto our mat. Letting yourself lie down, getting your spine nice and long. Maybe bringing your knees into your chest and rocking from side to side. And then keeping your right knee in, left leg out. Maybe pointing and flexing your feet. And then we'll switch sides, left knee in, right leg out. Again, you can point and flex your feet. And then bringing your right knee in, we'll take our hands behind our head. We're going to do a bit of core work here to make you feel strong today. So lifting your head, your neck, your shoulders off of the mat. Knees bent. Let's stretch the left leg out. We'll take the left elbow across. And then bringing your left knee in, we'll switch sides. Right elbow to left knee. So just moving back and forth with your breath. Keeping your head off the mat. And let's do 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and last one. Let's bring ourselves back to center, resting your head, bringing your knees in. Taking a moment to hug those knees in. Then we'll take our hands underneath our hips. We're going to lift the toes up to the ceiling and letting those legs float down to the floor. And before they hit the floor, let's bring the heels towards your bum, taking the feet to the ceiling and letting the legs float back down. So keeping your belly button pulled in towards your spine, keeping your breath flowing like your legs are flowing, nice and easy, using the core. And the next time you bring your knees in, let's switch the direction. So we'll send the feet out, scooping those feet up, and then bringing the knees to the chest. Moving with your breath again. At any point, if you find that you're holding your breath, you are maybe doing too much. So just back off a little bit. And we'll do 2 more, scooping up. And last one, bringing those knees in. Let's wrap the arms around again. Taking a moment to rest here. And then bringing your hands back down to the floor. We have one more little core sequence to do. So taking your legs out so that your knees are bent slightly, as if you've fallen over on a chair. Your toes are pointing out, heels are pushing out. And then we're going to draw a line parallel to the floor as you take your feet out and then bringing them back in. So taking them out and back in, going back and forth. And 3 more like this, pulling that belly button towards your spine. Beautiful. And then bringing your feet down to the floor. Let's bring our hands onto our belly, maybe letting your knees open up, coming into a reclined butterfly pose. If your knees aren't feeling good or your hips aren't feeling good in this, you can always just keep your knees up. So just breathing into your hands, filling your belly up nice and full. Then we'll help our knees come back up. Let's set our feet up so that our heels are underneath the knees. Spine is nice and long. Feet are hip width apart. Connecting back to your breath, we're going to come into a supported bridge pose. So as you exhale, let's push into the heels, lifting your hips up, making sure your neck feels okay as we hold our hips up towards the ceiling, making sure the knees stay hip width apart, keeping your breath flowing. And maybe while you're here, if you want, you can wiggle your shoulders under and maybe clasping your hands, coming up a little bit higher. And if your hands are clasped, you can unclasp them and flatten out your shoulders. Let's slowly lower ourselves back down towards the mat. Nice and slow. Feeling each of those little bones touching down. Feeling the full support of the floor. Let's take our right leg up to the ceiling. Pointing our toes, we'll start with some circles, painting some spirals on the ceiling. Maybe your spirals are getting bigger and bigger. And then we'll take that spiral in the opposite direction, getting smaller and smaller. And then we'll rest the right ankle onto the left knee, letting your right knee move away from your body. And if you're happy here, if this feels like a good stretch for your hip, you can stay like this. Or if you want to take it further, you can thread your hands through, taking hold of that left leg and bringing it in towards your chest. Sending your breath into any tension you might be feeling in your hip. Taking a couple more breaths here. And then we'll release the hands, keeping your right leg on your left. We'll reach the arms out into a T shape. I'm going to slowly let the knees float down towards the right so that your right foot is creating a bit of weight on your left knee. Now, if this does not feel right for your knee, you can most certainly take your foot off. If it feels okay, just leave it there and we'll take our head over to the left. Coming into a twist, breathing down into your belly. As you exhale, letting go. And then we'll bring our head back to center, taking your right foot off of your left knee. Let's bring the knees back up and just let them float from left to right. And then back to center, bringing your arms back in. Let's take the left toes to the ceiling, pointing your toes and starting with some circles. Spiraling that foot out, getting your circles to be a little bit bigger. And when you have a nice big circle, you can take it in the other direction. Maybe getting those circles to be smaller and smaller. And when you have a dot, we'll let the left ankle rest on the right knee. See how this side feels. You might find one side is a little tighter than the other. So just monitoring what feels right for you. If you want, you can take your hands and bring that right knee into your chest. Sending that breath into any tension. And then we'll release our hands, bringing the right foot back down, keeping your left ankle on your knee. Let's stretch the arms into a T shape. We'll let the knees float down to the left, keeping your shoulders resting on the floor as you look over towards the right. If this is too much for your foot to be on your knee, you can release your foot from your knee. Breathing all the way down the length of your spine and letting go. Then bringing your head to center, releasing your foot back to the mat. We'll let the knees just float from side to side. And then we'll stretch the legs out. Let's bring our arms up and over our head, taking a nice big good morning stretch. Maybe letting out a sigh. And then letting your arms just float down by your sides, bringing your palms up towards the ceiling. Allowing yourself a few moments to rest and digest all of those poses. Feeling that wonderful energy vibrating throughout you. Raising your vibration. And while you're here, I will read a poem by Zach Beach called Alive. We are alive every day, and alive for the moments we realize it. When lost in thought, an ancestor or a god or a speck of pollen shakes us awake, and an ocean of small beauties demand our attention. The flowers themselves moving like music, the trees swaying instead of snapping, the summer breeze cooling our skin, dancing with our hair and tickling our nostrils with scents of faraway lands. The hummingbird making its 10,000-mile journey with such tiny wings, and you smack dab in the middle of this painting. Alive. What a gift. When you're ready, you can begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, bringing a full breath back into your body, and eventually making your way back up to a seated position. Sitting up, feeling your sits bones on the floor, spine rising up towards the sky. Resting your hands on your knees, palms up, fingers outstretched. We'll bring our voices together with the sound of Om 3 times, the universal sound of all things. Let's take a nice big breath in. Bringing your hands together at your heart center, and may your vibration continue to be high for the rest of your day. Namaste.